Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called, I'll Take Your Pennies. I was working at a gas station about 20 years ago. One evening this lady comes in, dumps like 5 or 6 handfuls of pennies on the counter and states her preferred brand. Ordinarily, our cashiers would just tell someone to screw off if they were trying this. But I was pretty chill at the time, and I had nothing to do but run the register and stuff my face with food from the deli case. So, cue malicious compliance. I just said, okay, but I'll have to take other customers, I'll count this between. She objects. It's all there, I counted it already. I reply, if my drawer comes up wrong, I'll get in trouble. I have to count it. Sorry. She starts stomping around the store, all mad, throwing her arms around, etc. I start counting, meticulously setting the pennies aside in stacks of tens and pausing every time a customer comes in. All the while, this lady is acting like she's been stabbed through the hand. Maybe half a dozen customers and 10 minutes later I'm nearing the end of the pile. She's still standing by the door, getting more and more impatient, moaning at everyone who comes through. I was giving the other customers priority, so they didn't care, of course. Anyway, I finished counting, and she's short, maybe 15 cents. It was fairly common for people to rate the penny dish to cover the cost of a package of cigarettes they couldn't quite afford, and this was generally allowed. It was a small town, and after all, who even cares? But she promised me it was all there, and I quite don't like that, so I take the overflowing free penny dish and move it behind the counter before calling her over. You are excellent shorts. Can't I just cover it from the dish? Where is it? What dish? There's a dish. There's always a dish. You took it away. I give her a puzzled look and wave my hands over the counter. There's no dish. I don't know what you are talking about. She is incensed and cusses me out for a while. I just shrug it off. She left without her cigarettes, of course. My boss came over afterward and told me I didn't have to count those or even take them. The dude did not get me at all, but I just played it straight and was like, oh, okay. The next story is called Pancake Fiasco. This happened at a restaurant a few years ago. We'll just call it Brecker Carol. So, on a busy Sunday afternoon, the church crowd was slowly winding down and we were nearing our dinner rush. In this particular restaurant, you can order breakfast all day. At around 3 PM, 2 ladies were seated in my section and I greeted them promptly. Both ordered drinks and food at the same time. Guest 1 ordered Mama's pancake breakfast with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy bacon. Guest 2 ordered the Grandma's sampler with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy sausage, bacon and ham. I put their order in exactly as they ordered and told the cooks how they said they wanted to see no pink anywhere. Cooks make the food, I expedite and bring out their meal. Everything looks the way they ordered it. Charcoal bacon, sausage and ham. I set the food down and they immediately start running toward me. Never once did they ask for everything at the same time. Even after I asked, is there anything else I can get for you? Every time I brought back something like hot sauce, ketchup or napkins, they always needed something else. After 5 minutes of back and forth, they said everything was fine and I went and did other duties. They hadn't touched their food until I had everything for them they had me run around for. A few minutes later, my manager on duty comes to me and asks me about their table. He says they are complaining the eggs are cold and their food is burnt. I explained they said everything looked fine, and the eggs would not have been cold if they had asked me for extra napkins, hot sauce, ketchup and butter and jelly on one trip instead of 6. He goes back and forth with them, and they are adamant they are not paying for the eggs or bacon and are only paying for the pancakes. The Grandma's sampler comes with 2 pancakes, a sampler of meats, eggs and a side of your choice for $9.99. 2 a la carte pancakes are $7.99. Mama's pancake breakfast comes with 3 pancakes, eggs and your choice of meat for $7.99. 3 a la carte pancakes are $9.99, obviously $2 more than the breakfast. My manager hands the receipts to each lady and both stop him before he can walk away. Guest number 2 is angry that she is paying $2 less than what her breakfast would have cost and she felt that wasn't a good enough discount. Guest number 1 is angry because her meal is now more than what it was before. The only thing my boss kept saying to both of them was, you asked to only pay for the pancakes and that is what I charged you for. And then he walked away. They paid up front, angry the entire time at the cash register, making a scene. They threatened to call corporate and said they will be returning to speak to someone higher than my manager. My manager and I went into the back and kept laughing. You don't get many wins in the service industry, but this one will always be a memorable one. The third story is called Nature Compliance. My house is surrounded by two gardens, one in the front facing the street and one in the back bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather passed in 2002, and after that the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, around 2005, my mom read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees and she took over the gardens. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and me so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she dies. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape, with all the birds, bees, bumblebees and butterflies flying around. In autumn we get hedgehogs and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Then, recently, we received a letter from the city. It stated that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way. And while the berries are poisonous, to get them you'd have to be quite resilient because they are surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be the ideal food for some local birds. So I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked if they would like to have a look at our gardens. And maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature friendly. They came, looked around and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our gardens as especially nature friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature. And since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. The last story is called Not Made Redundant. This story is from June 2012, a week or so short of 10 years ago. This story takes place in Australia, where we have very stringent laws around employment, firing, hiring, redundancies, maternity, etc. I started working for this particular company in March of 2011. I was hired basically on the spot once I demonstrated my knowledge of the product that I would be working on and started 2 days later because of a deadline that had to be met. I had a very specific contract for what I did. I was thrown in the deep end. A sleepless 7 days followed, but by the end I managed to do a decent job on the first of many products. 2 months after I started, my direct boss, the general manager, was let go and not really replaced properly, but a consultant took over their responsibilities. I should also add that majority of operations were in Australia, while a smaller team operated in the UK. This is also where the CEO was based, despite 80 to 90% of products coming out of our office. Towards the third quarter of 2011, the CEO's contract ended and was not renewed, so the hunt began for a new CEO, who was eventually found and began working also in the UK location. After a very busy 2011, hiring approximately 30 new employees and launching a bunch of new products, business was booming. Until the second week of 2012. By this point, upper management couldn't stay on top of everything, bringing in the COO of the parent company to oversee operations in Australia. At this point we had a group meeting where we learned the future of the company. All operations in Australia would cease at the end of June 2012. This was followed by management explaining that everyone except a handful of people would be made redundant with payouts. The handful who would remain will instead be made redundant after finishing their projects at the end of 2012. So over the next 5 months, as operations were slowly winding up and people started to exit the company, I lined up a few job interviews. One of these was my dream job, based in Europe, working in the exact field I wanted to be in. I kept this quiet, telling only a handful of my closest friends and my still current job. The recruitment process took quite a few weeks. Towards the end of May, I'm still in the running for this dream job, and by this point pretty much everyone knows, wishing me luck. Around comes the start of June, and everyone starts to get their redundancy letters, giving them 28 days of official notice outlining their pay schedules and all legal entitlements. When I say everyone, I mean everyone, except me. I find this very strange, but quickly realize it's because if I hand in my notice, I won't be entitled to a payout, and the company gets to save a few $1,000s. This is where my malicious compliance kicks in. I keep quiet and don't say anything. In about the second week of June, I found out that I didn't get my dream job, and I tell one other person, but make sure they don't tell anyone else. Fast forward to the last week of June, and now there are just 7 employees, including me, left in the office alongside the GM, COO and CFO. Everyone except me has picked up their desks and at this point just showing up to basically be social and reminisce. On the second to last day, I run into the COO next to my desk. Remember, he was from the parent company, brought in from overseas to wind up operations. He goes, "You must be saddened that tomorrow is the last day." Casually, I respond with, "Oh, is it? I know it will be quiet, but I didn't realize it's my last day." He takes a closer look at my desk, still not packed up, has the most confused look on his face and responds with, "Yeah, it's everyone's last day. Why wouldn't it be your last day?" "Oh, I never got a redundancy letter." At this point, I can see the expression on his face go from, "Huh?" to, "Oh crap." In the hope that I would get a different job and resign so I don't get redundancy entitlements, among everything else going on, they forgot to issue me an official redundancy notice. At this point, he realizes all this and goes, "Oh, come and see me in my office in 30 minutes. Half an hour later, I go to his office. He's sitting with the CFO by his side, but also kind of behind him. There are a few papers on the desk. I sit down and he starts, "Sorry we didn't do this properly at an earlier point, but here's all your redundancy paperwork." The first piece of paper is the official letter. I pick it up, start reading, and the first thing that catches my eye is the date. It had been backdated to 27 days previously. Now, this is a 2-copy letter that needs to be signed by both employer and employee. I put it down and go, "That's not today's date." He gets flustered and responds with, "Sorry we forgot to get to you, but the notice was issued on that date." It might have been issued then, but this is the first time I'm seeing of it, and you'll note it hasn't been signed by me. "Yes, but you knew this was coming." I did, but I assumed I'd be retained for longer because I wasn't given official notice. "What do you want us to do now?" "Put today's date on it and I'll sign it. But legally, we need to wrap up operations before the end of the month. We can't do that. You could try to fire me instead, but I don't think the Fair Work Commission would be satisfied with your reason for me not wanting to sign a falsified redundancy letter." By this point, he's very flustered. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing in my head. "Okay, let me change this for you." He disappears, comes back with another copy with the correct date. "Okay, here you go. I'm not signing this yet." "Why not?" "Well, I've got 28 more days of legal employment now, which means I'm owed an extra day and a bit of annual leave in my final payment schedule." He looks at the CFO, and the CFO looks at him and nods in agreement. He changes my payout schedule, adds another day of annual leave to it, prints it out and hands it to me. I carefully look over everything, it's all in order now. I sign the paperwork and we both get copies. "So, what will you be doing here for the next 28 days?" "Nothing, I'm not coming back after tomorrow." "But you are legally employed for another 4 weeks. We can't be paying you for nothing. You should help out the IT guy and pack up some boxes." "There's nothing in my contract about packing up boxes, so I won't be doing that. Also, if you read my contract, it says I'm employed to work on this one specific project only, and any other work outside of this needs to be agreed on separately. Since you sold my project to the competition yesterday, I have no further contractual obligations to fulfill." By this point, the CFO is barely holding in his laughter. "Well, that's not fair. We have to pay you an extra month for nothing." "That's not my problem. My contractual obligations have been fulfilled. I'm going to pack up and go home at 5 p.m. "Okay, please make sure it's not before 5 p.m. I get back to my desk and pick it up in less than 5 minutes, put all my personal belongings in a box and just sit around doing nothing. One of my colleagues, who was remaining for a few more months, comes over and asks, "What was all that about?" I explain everything in detail, and he lets out the biggest booming laugh, goes to his office, closes the door and continues laughing. 15 minutes later, the CFO comes over and goes, "You don't have to stay until the end of the day. You can take off whenever you want." And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and would like to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.